And hello, and welcome to Alex Connect's Inbox MTG Study session 110. How to properly pronounce this type of number? 110? I guess we're going to call it that way. My name is Alex, and today we will basically continue to study regular playsets, or just regular sets. Again, we continue to study vintage. Again, vintage set studies is going to be a pretty recurring theme in the current streams, for the first part at least, because in most cases we're going to deal with these type of sets. So yeah, again, today's stream I will continue to give away the beta keys, which we didn't give it away in the previous streams, until we're going to basically give away all of them, which only 10 of them, not that many, so hopefully someone is going to get something. I managed to fix a giveaway thing, so we actually will be able to properly kind of set giveaways and give away things in a proper way, not in a random way. So yeah, again, when people will come, then I will talk about basically the beta keys. Again, I'm planning on giving away at least 5 keys in the first part of the stream, and the second part of the stream, when we're going to play Magic Arena, I'm going to give away the second portion of the keys. Yeah, so let's just continue with the studies. Again, if you want a key, just basically ask in the chat, and I will enlighten you how you will be able to basically attain those. So yeah, the last card that we finished studying was a Gloom, or at least when actually didn't finish it, we stopped on at this card. We finished first page, so there's the 3 pages here, so we finally got to the second page. As I said previously, we're kind of having a bit of trouble with studying at this point, because things are kind of slow, because this is the first set that was created by Magic, and because of this, it has a lot of different alterations in rules. Rules are a little bit seem a little bit complicated, and we kind of constantly have to compare the rules of the cards in the printed version, and this, it kind of made up our mind what to choose the best. So yeah, I'll just go without further ado, because yeah, again, for the first hour we're going to study Magic in this format by just studying it. In the second portion of the session, which is the second hour, we're going to play Magic. We're going to test a new event, which name is, I forgot the name. Brewer's Delight. Yeah. Yeah. Continuing, doing things. Check the sound and go. Yeah, continue. Doing things. Sound works? It works, good. Continuing. So, Glue. White spells cost 3 more to cast. Activated abilities of white enchantments cost 3 more to activate. Again, most of the things that decreasing or increasing the cost we already covered, so we're not going to cover that. And in terms of activated abilities of white enchantments cost 3 more to activate, it again kind of works the same, but it just works specifically on certain type of spells. Right here it works only for white enchantments, so it's pretty kind of specific. And again, we want to think in general terms, and because of this, most of the things we already covered, and the rest is just figuring out, do we have a potential in certain abilities that we could add as a general thing that we could use in a new way, not necessarily in the way that we already establish it in the intellectual maps, or in the mind maps, how they called out there. But I rather like to call them intellectual maps, because this is the map of your own intellect, not necessarily your mind, because mind is much more complex. So go. Yeah, because of this we're going to skip that. So the next is Goblin Balloon Brigade. It seems like we're already, yeah, I guess it's pretty similar Goblin. Yeah, I remember it from M11, from Conspiracy, 9th edition. Yep, remember this goblin, pretty cool. So again, pay 1 red, and Goblin Balloon Brigade is basically gains flying until end of the turn. No thanks, we're not going to cover that because it just works with the flying, which is regular thing until end of the turn. Again, we could think about like giving flying ability permanently, not temporary, but again, in most cases everything kind of works by logic. So we know that we have a permanent abilities, permanent effects, and we have temporary effects, and out of this seems like we don't need to cover it. So the next thing is other goblins creatures get +1/+1 and have mountain walk. Again, everything that works with type of walks, which basically means they can't be blocked as long as defending player controls something of that type of walk. So it could be a certain type of creature walk, it could be a certain spell, it could be a walk based on certain ability, for instance, first strike, double strike, or whatever. So if a creature has a double strike, then it can't be blocked as long as defending player controls that type of creature with has this type of ability. The same kind of could work for type of mountains. We could even tie this thing to actions. Make this work not only for the types of cards, but for the actions. For instance, if player played spell this turn, this creature can't be blocked, or whatever. So basically it gains this action walk. This is something that I actually didn't cover. Let's just add action walk, because I covered everything that revolves around walks, but we didn't cover it. So we had a lot of walks. There's something here. There are somewhere here. Need to find them. So intimidate, proliferate, rampage, menace, retrace, bestow. Yeah, Magic has a lot of interesting mechanics, so most of them kind of somewhat similar, but they are just a little bit more specified to a certain type of card, or to a certain type of action or situation. We're going to revisit all of those in the first draft. Right now we just kind of getting through the base study part, which is getting the basic knowledge of all these spells, basically kind of extending our own basically the base of information. Right now we're just gathering information, on the stage of gathering information. Then we're going to go through the first draft, which is going to be basically revisiting all of these abilities, trying to think, are they truly different or they're the same, and if they're the same, we're going to kind of cut them down and basically make this intellectual map smaller and smaller and smaller. Right now, when usually I'm working with maps for about probably for about 5 years, maybe less, maybe I don't remember, but I work with intellectual maps and mind maps for a long time already, and what I kind of figured out for myself personally, that I love to kind of gather all information in the intellectual map for the first time in a pretty hectic way. I create some type of divisions, some type of categories for the beginning, but I'm keeping them super kind of not super well organized, and then after I will gather all information that I need, I basically start to revisit all this information and put it into the separate categories that I'm going to create another categories for those categories, and etc. So basically eliminate something similar and put things together. This way, at least my mind works that way. For some people it could not work, because again, the thing with intellectual maps and with mind maps in general, they are personal. You will work with them the way that they are working for you, the way your brain works. And one of the cool things about intellectual maps that I kind of discovered personally for myself is I learned how my mind works, how my mind works with the different type of information the best. Okay, Walker, no. Seriously? We don't have that many walkers? Oh, we actually had it on top. Damn it, I have to go back. Yep, here it is. I don't know why it's here. question walk is defending player possesses a certain out-of-the-game quality. This card has a certain in-game ability, mechanic, benefit of some kind. So basically, quality could be anything out of the game. Look, possession. If defending player is wearing any clothing made of denim, for instance, this creature is unblockable. And defending possesses a certain... I'm not necessarily sure about this. I mean, it's similar, but let's just basically copy it into our regular abilities too, because yeah, it kind of works in here, but again, remember with if like we discovered this in a unsets, and unsets are pretty complicated in terms of like different abilities, possibilities, and combination of abilities, and because of this we kind of decided to put this thing in here. But it actually works in general abilities, everything that works with the mountain walk and other type of walks. We actually need to specify it a little bit more close to the not frequently used, but the actual mechanics. So this is the actual magic mechanics, so let's just cover this. So again, we will keep the question mark here. The only thing that we will change though is basically the way that it works. Again, this is the basic stuff, nothing super mega special about it though. We just want to put every information like that could have potential in it, because again, you can think about mountain walk or like the plane walk overall to just work, that could work only on planes, on earth, or on certain colors. But again, we could apply it to creatures, we could apply it to actions, we could apply it to anything, which is awesome. So this is definitely something that we will do. If defending player possesses a certain out-of-the-game quality, this card has a certain in-game ability, mechanic, benefit of some kind. Yeah, it's kind of super general. They can't be blocked as long as defending player controls. This defending player possesses a certain out-of-game. Yeah, let's just do this. We're going to slightly change it. So, okay, if defending player possesses a certain... No. This needs to be deleted. Oh no, I'm going to sneeze. Scooby-Doo! Sorry about that. Ugh. So walk types, they can't be blocked as long as they other goblins. Okay, let's just go with the creature. Creature can't be blocked as long this creature, not just the creature. This creature can't be blocked as long as defending player possesses a certain out-of-the-game quality. And again, the out-of-the-game quality could be anything, no, in-game quality. Yep. This is the main difference from the thing that we discovered previously. Because the thing that we discovered previously worked on out-of-the-game qualities. So for instance, wearing something, some type of clothes, some type of a collar, some type of stripes or whatever. So basically, the out-of-the-game quality. Right here, we're working with in-game qualities, which could be basically creature type, color, mana cost, and basically etc. The text, etc. So again, like multiple possibilities, even abilities. Actions. This is basically the reason why I decided to add it in here. etc. Okay, that quality could be anything in game. Let's just put it in here. Why not? Good. we're not going to save, because again, each time that I'm going to save this thing is going to add to the size of the file. So they say that we have to save regularly, but no one says to us that the more you save, the bigger file becomes, and it's not necessarily the best for the file, because one of the ways to decrease the size of the file is to basically resave it. Save it as with a different name, so that way it might weigh a little bit less. At least it works for my maps. I don't know how it works for different type of files. It doesn't work for everything. It's kind of somewhat picky. So yeah, go continue. Flying Gargoyle. We already listened to this song, like at the beginning. How interesting is that? This is a random stuff. You can't control how music is distributed. Again, this is just a flying gargoyle. By the way, am I pronouncing it right? Actually, I wanna make sure.
Gargoyle.
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 Gargoyle. So yeah, it basically gets +0/+1 until end of the turn, which is completely fine. I'm kind of fine with it. It's just a regular buff that adds nothing to the attack and something to defense, or to, yeah, we already covered it. Regular creature ogre, continuing. So enchanted creature, again, enchant a specific creature, enchanted aura. Enchanted creature has protection from green. This effect doesn't remove green word. So when it comes down to this thing, I already kind of thought about this. So green word, it's not a green card. So why would you specify this effect doesn't remove green word? It's not going to remove green word because green word is white. If it had protection from white, then specification of this caliber is important. I guess at that time it wasn't clear. The rules wasn't necessarily, I believe, established. Right now we have a big rule book in Magic that basically has like a lot of things, how protection works and etc. For instance, if you have a protection for a certain type of color, and if you're going to put a protection, for instance, if you have a green card, and if you have protection from green, and if you're going to put this card with protection from green on your creature, and your card is basically green, without this specification, green ward is going to be removed. So in this case, I don't get why it's specified, because again, it's probably just because the rules were made up on a go. At that stage, we didn't have a extensive rule book, and now we have it. So because of this thing is basically not important here. But to basically specify how protection works in each card of that type that works with the protection, this coverage is basically stands. But in other cases, it's kind of pointless. So one thing though we need to add, so let's just find the protection. I believe we have it. Creatures that can be saved by a protection this turn lose this ability until the turn end. Okay, interesting. So yeah, right here in the protection, I want to add something interesting that works with the protection. So, and this something is going to be this. Basically, this kind of a general rule that applies to the protection. This effect doesn't remove this enchantment from target. On which it applied. It's a weird, but it's clear for me. So again, protection from die rolls in here, nothing. Okay, protection, this creature can be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, or do anything controlled by a player. And this effect, let's just go with the protection. Protection. Let's just leave this effect and add protection. Because there could be a lot of effects. Doesn't remove this enchantment from target on which it applied. Basically, die. Auras usually keep attached. So yeah, just the general specification. So this effect, protection, doesn't remove this enchantment from the target on which it applied. If protection self-incriminating. I don't believe that this is the right way to. It's not necessarily, yeah, so basically it's something that works against the card itself. So I guess I don't know any different words that we could, and any different phrases that would work here. For me, it's perfectly clear that it's basically if protection is self-incriminated, if protection is self-incriminated. Yeah, if protection is self-incriminated, and that way it's not going to remove this enchantment. This effect doesn't remove this enchantment from target on which it applied or attached to, if protection self-incriminated. Good. So this is basically what I meant by this thing. Yeah, by the way, we're working within alpha, beta, and unlimited still, and go continue. I'm going to talk about how I'm going to go and work with Magic, but like from now on, because there's a lot of changes. So I didn't stream on this Tuesday. There is a reason for it. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later. This is the last Friday that we're going to stream Magic in English. So from now on, I'm going to approach Magic a little bit differently, because Fridays are usually empty, no one watching, no one is even entering, basically no one even able to find me, because apparently this is not the day to stream when you don't have an audience. So because no one is basically, I believe there's just too much competition, and most of the people are not sitting here and watching streams. They are somewhere out partying, whatever, basically living life. So and because of this, I guess Friday is not the perfect day for that, especially when it comes down to the high how would I properly say it? I said the word like half a minute ago, and I forgot about it. Forget it. Come on. Competitive. Yeah, it's basically too competitive, and there's too many competition out there in Fridays. So because of this, from now on, I'm going to stream Magic in English only on Tuesdays, which is going to be completely fine as usual. And Magic that I'm going to stream on Fridays now on schedule are going to be in Russian. I believe it's a good way to kind of separate those two, because again, unfortunately, I don't have time to implement Russian streams during the week as a unscheduled streams, because I just don't have time to do that. And because of this, it's probably a good idea to, since we don't have any audience either way, it's a good idea to kind of implement this in a little bit like the diverse approach, I would say. So kind of put things separate. So like one part of the week we streaming in English, the second part of the week we're streaming in Russian, which is kind of could be a good thing, especially when Magic is going to work with language. We will continue to study Magic in that way, and there's in English with basically Magic Set studies, but Russian streams are just going to be play studies, because I'm not sure how I'm going to study this thing in Russian, because it's just not going to work. I'm going to spend too much time doing this and like switching between two languages, trying to translate this thing for other people, like for chat members. It's just going to be too much. And most of the cards are in English, especially like in old versions, in the vintage, it's better for me to study those things in English, not in Russian, because again, English is kind of an original English in which these cards are created, and logically you have to work with the original because translations sometimes are not that good, and you kind of losing how ability works with the translation sometimes. And reading the original, it's kind of keep your wheels turning, which is a good thing, and it's a good way to learn English. So yeah, continuing. Creature bear, just a regular 2/2 creature. So instant prevent the next X damage that would be dealt to any target this turn. Again, just to prevent a certain type of damage. Until end of turn, you may pay 1 anytime you could cast an instant, which means that you could use it basically as an instant, this ability. Which is weird, most of the abilities are actually used... Oh no, until end of the turn, you may pay 1 time. You could cast an instant. If you do, prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to that permanent or player this turn. Again, it's just a combination ability. Again, it works with a certain like part of the turn. One thing that it kind of creates an interesting way, so it works like an instant. So basically you cast it, it adds this type of effect. But then until end of the turn you may pay 1 anytime you could cast an instant, like an additional cost. No, not like an additional, just 1. And if you do, prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to the permanent on. It's like double instant, which is pretty interesting. I don't know, like I see some potential in it, like to put it as a like as something separate, like a separate ability. But how to call it and how to generalize it, I have no clue. So again, it's clear how it works. It kind of works like it's just a regular instant, but then we have the ability to kind of prolongate this instant and use it multiple times, which is pretty interesting. So, like, usually when we're casting an instant, it just works. Like, it's an effect that works in a stack, it's applied, and that's it. But this card kind of allows us until end of the turn continue to use this ability, which is interesting. This is not something that is familiar to me when it comes down to Magic, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I believe we could put this thing to use. We're not going to try to reanalyze it right now because it just seems too much. So yeah, let's just go put it in here and add a specification that will help us to direct the thoughts in the proper direction once we will work with this. Because again, right now we're just gathering information, we're not sticking for longer on these type of things. So prevent the next X damage that would be dealt to any target this turn. Until end of turn you may pay 1 anytime you could cast an instant. If you do, prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to that permanent on that turn, on this turn. So basically it's like continuous instant. Continuous. Yeah, let's just establish it as a continuous instant that we'll be able to continue to use even after it's applied, which is an interesting thing. Go. We could save. There's already half a session done. Continuing. So the next card is again instant. Choose 1 target player gains 3 life or prevent the next 3 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn. Again, just gains life, allows us to gain life or basically choose a different type of player to gain life, which is pretty interesting, kind of diverse. And the next 3 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn is going to be prevented. It's pretty cool. So I believe I covered like the type of choices. We could check this out. I believe I covered it. Choose every card of a specific type and play under your control. Drop each of those cards 1 by 1 onto the playing arena area with a certain physical restrictions. Oh, come on, like how specific it could be. This is crazy. And face the results. Destroy cards in play that completely covered by dropped cards. again, this is too many like variables in here, and this is one of the problems with these type of kind of abilities that we faced before. Again, this is the action based. There's a lot of choices. You choose a player. No. For each player, choose a friend or foe. No. Yeah, there's a lot of choices. You choose a player. That player chooses self or others. There's a lot of things. Choose target creature with a counter on it. Okay, let's just try to put one then. Yeah, choose one. So we have choose one. This is not a mechanic, although it's probably a mechanic already, but it's not. So let's just put it in a keep it in here. So we have multiple things. We have choose one. You have the ability to choose one of the card's abilities and play it. Choose one or both or all. You have the ability to choose one or all of the card's abilities and play it. The same kind of could work with like different type of things. So we're not going to add new information. I believe it's self-explanatory. So you may choose one, you may choose two, you may choose three, you may choose both. If you have two, of course, chooses. You have the ability to choose one and then pay additional cost beyond the first for each time that it's going to be used. This is actual mechanic. It's somewhere there in the actual mechanics. I don't remember what it exactly, but it's there. So yeah, we're not going to cover it. Continuing. PDM. So Helm of Chotsduk. Checking sound. So Helm of Chotsduk. That was weird. Target creature gains banding until end of turn. Okay, we need to make sure that we have banding here. I believe we have. So when you basically band two creatures together and they will be able to attack at the same time, I believe. So any creature with bending and up to one without bending can attack in a band, basically together. Bends are blocked as a group, which is one of the unique possibilities of this mechanic. If any creature with bending you control are blocking or being blocked by a creature, you divide that creature's combat damage, not its controller, among any number of the creatures it's being blocked by or is blocking. So basically, you have a choice to distribute damage instead of the automatic distribution of the damage, which is pretty cool. It's kind of overcomplicated in here. I believe once we will revisit it, we will simplify it a little bit more. But again, since these abilities are the actual mechanics, we keeping them the same way. And if we're going to apply some changes to simplify things, they're not going to be that drastic. We're not going to cut any information because we don't know what information we might need later. Maybe this like weird specification, not its controller, might help us to properly understand how this mechanic works if we're going to face certain conditions that are not basic. So of course, usually for that you have a rule book, but yeah, this is one of the things that basically fascinates me about these type of games. I love their complexity. The complexity of these games pushing me and actually inspire me to create my own things and pushes me to like beyond thinking when it comes down to these abilities, which is awesome. So again, for me, Magic, it's not just a game. It's a analysis, it's learning, it's getting better, not just in the game itself, but getting better in analytical thinking, in putting things together, in combining things and designing things, and coming up with your own stuff, and basically getting inspired, which I believe most of the mediums are here to make us, to give us inspiration and makes us inspired, and then to pursue something on our own. If we're not using this, I believe we're wasting time. If you play the game, make this game inspire you to do something on your own, not just waste the time on playing the game and waste your life. Again, have a goal. It doesn't mean that, like, don't play. If you like, play it to have fun, to relax, whatever. But again, if you will keep a little bit like deeper goal while you playing the game, it will be much more rewarding. And again, you're not going to waste time. I remember the days when I played Lineage day in out, day in out, day in out, day in out, and it was just crazy. And I don't believe that I learned a lot, but this game, it was just awesome. And yes, I wasted a lot of time playing it, and some of this time I'm really regretting, because instead of trying to figure out who I am and what I want from in life, I spend on just wasting time on the MMORPG. It was not like the best thing ever. But again, we learn in our mistakes, and this is the way. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that today. So, enchanted creature gets plus O plus 2, which is completely fine. Enchanted creature gets plus O plus 1 until end of the turn. Again, it gives permanent thing, and it gives temporary thing, which we could reactivate multiple times, which is pretty cool. And most of these type of things were already covered, so we're not going to cover it anymore. Enchanted creature, again, permanent effect, plus 1 plus 2. Okay, target creature, ooh, this is a mine thing. A target creature gets plus X plus O until end of the turn, where X is the any amount that you will be able to pay. Again, covered it. Artifact at the beginning of each player's draw step. Okay, it works with the draw step. This is if this card is untapped, the player draws an additional card. I believe we already covered something similar. Not something specific like this, but definitely something similar. So basically, at the beginning of each player's draw step, which basically specifies a certain portion of the turn, which is a draw step. So we have at the beginning of upkeep, then there's going to be a draw step, right here it's specified each player's draw step, so it's going to work for your and your opponent's draw steps. If this card is basically untapped, that player draws an additional card. Of course, it works for each player separately, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I don't believe that we need to put it anywhere at the beginning of each player's draw step, but I kind of see potential in it. And again, if you see potential in it, add it. Don't be a lazy bone. Add it. Some food. Sometimes this happens. At the beginning of each player's draw step, we're going to change draw step. If this card untapped or has a different type of condition, which we will think about right now, the player draws an additional card. So how we're going to work with this, it's pretty interesting. So draw step is connected to draw additional card. This is just a condition. So in the future we're going to think about it in a much more general way. So we're going to think about at the beginning of a certain, or basically at the certain point of the game, at the certain specific point of the game, if this card is meeting certain conditions set by the card's text, the player that basically right now his or her turn does something that correlates with the first thing. Again, it's just too much. So I'm seeing it a little bit in a much more general way, and because of this I want to put it in here. Yeah, so let's just go with the draw step and put this information like so. The beginning of the draw end step, this is basically a step, this is the turn certain part of the turn, and player taking this turn. So depending on the turn structure, it could completely change. So because of this, I don't want to keep the like, at the beginning, in the end, whatever. And the same goes with the draw step. It could change. Draw step could change. We could add something different in here. So let's just go with the type. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of specifications in here. Again, when you see potential in something, it's better to and draw an additional card can reflect each other. Or be unrelated. So what I mean by that, if they reflect each other, draw step, that means that we're going to draw additional card. The top step, we will be able to untap or tap it like an additional creature. The play step, when we're playing a card, or the main phase, will allow us to play like one card, for instance, for 0 mana cost without paying any mana cost. So that's what I'm talking about. That's where I'm seeing potential in this part of the mechanic. Can reflect each other or be unrelated. When it comes down to being unrelated, it could be unrelated. For instance, on a draw step, opponent sacrifice a creature. Completely unrelated, but still they could work. If that card is untapped, so this thing works if certain conditions are met. If this card is untapped, it basically means that if certain conditions are met. These conditions could be applied to the card itself. Or to the game state, or to any in-game condition. So that's where things are getting complicated when it comes down to, I guess, designing mechanics. There's so many freaking possibilities, and by designing one simple mechanic, you could reverse engineer this mechanic and like chop that off on the separate parts and made up your own separate mechanics, and then recombine it with each other with a different conditions, with the different words, and you will get completely different results, which is one of the awesomest things that I like with this MTG Study thing. This definitely kind of pushes me in thinking, which is awesome. It's all about drawing. The player draws an additional card. So again, as I said, yeah, we're not going to talk about this. It's for the most part, draws an additional card can reflect each other or be unrelated. Yeah, so right here they reflect each other, and being unrelated, we're not going to come up with any type of example. It's just pointless, so let's just leave it at this. GUID. Yeah, we have about like maybe from 15 to 20 minutes, maybe less. We have some time, which is pretty cool. Okay, continuing. So creature, Minotaur, 2/3, costs 3, kind of cool. Sorcery, Hurricane. Hurricane deals X damage to each creature with flying and each player. Yeah, I don't like spells that restrict us to a certain type of creatures. Although it's pretty cool, especially if you like playing against complete flyer deck. I guess these type of spells, you usually keep those type of spells to the sideboard, like in your sideboard, because if you're going to fight against pretty strong flying creature deck, you definitely will need this. If not, it could become pointless. And I guess if you play, especially it works in best of 3 on a certain or in certain type of tournament when you're familiar with the decks that people are playing, and that way you could adapt to the decks that you play. So basically, I guess these type of cards are always going to be in sideboard, unless you play in a certain format, or if the decks are predetermined. For instance, if it's not a Magic, we're basically working with a some certain game which has predetermined decks that we not able to change. For instance, like a couple of games that I designed have predetermined decks, or at least not designed, but created a concept for. They're not designed anyway. They're in a pretty beginning stage of the game, but the basic mechanics are set, the basic type of decks are set, and these decks are predetermined, and you're not necessarily able to change things in those decks. And for these type of things, of course, you will use those. Yeah, kind of to counterbalance things, especially if your deck doesn't have any flyers. If this is not something that your type of deck works with. Yeah, we're not going to cover that. Again, just deals X damage to a certain type of creature, or creature with a certain type of ability or whatever, and each player just basically adds an additional one. So whenever a Hypnotic Spectre deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random. Which is completely fine. I mean, this creature is flying, deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I remember this card. I kind of want to watch it how it looks. Maybe I'm even familiar with this one. Yep, I remember this one. TM. Definitely remember. Might even. Oh, it's the same art. And I believe the same here. Yeah, I don't believe that we need to cover it. Again, whenever a creature deals damage to an opponent, some type of thing will be triggered. As already covered. Destroy target land just destroys a certain type of card. Top target artifact, creature, or land. Again, allows us to basically tap a certain creature, basically type of card. That's some type of permanent that's already in a battlefield. Okay, this is interesting. So mask, you able to pay X to use this mask's ability. You may choose a creature card in your hand whose mana cost could be paid by some amount of or all of. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Mana you spend on X. If you do, you may cast that card face down as a 2/2 creature spell without paying its mana cost. If the creature that spell becomes as it resolves has not been turned face up and would assign or deal damage, be dealt damage, or become tapped. Instead, it's turned face up and assigns or deals damage, is dealt damage, or becomes tapped. My god! Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Not now. Screw it. Not now. This is pretty interesting. I mean, I'm getting excited when I'm dealing with these type of complex mechanics. I believe even for a native speaker, this is pretty complicated ability. Of course, you will understand it once you will read it multiple times. But for a non-native speaker, it's freaking crazy. I mean, what? Variable X colors. I'll just go pay X. You may choose a creature card in your hand, blah blah blah. Oh, this is crazy. We're not going to specify anything about it. So basically, it kind of allows us to perform, to using 3 conditions, as I probably understand it for the first time, use 3 conditions which are so wouldn't assign damage, deal damage, dealt damage, or become tapped. 4 conditions. We might even choose a 5th condition, which is basically like the turned face or up or down. yeah, so basically it uses multiple conditions, and using all these conditions to use this ability. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast Cersei. Because of this, it's kind of like too complicated. We're not going to try to generalize it because it's just too crazy, it's too specified. When you have too many things combined in one big ability, it's just all over the place and it's too much. And this is one of the reasons why why it takes me so long to go through the first set, because there's a lot of abilities like this that are taking too much time to figure out how they work properly. But again, I kind of like understand how it works, but like try to generalize it is just too much. We're not going to spend time on it. Let's just continue, because yeah, right now we're just gathering information, remember. Continuing. So by the way, this is an artifact. I don't believe that we need to cover that, but it's better to do that. So that means that this ability is basically an activated ability, is not a spell, because it might not work if it would be a spell, because again, activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. By the way, just put this one down here. So this is artifact, and that means that it has an activated ability. It's probably not the cut. No, it's fine. Keep it that way. Keep it that way. Keep it that way. Continue. So, enchant creature. Enchanted creature can attack as through it had haste. So basically, it gives the creature haste. Whatever. Untap enchanted creature for 0. Activate this ability only during your turn, and only once each turn. Again, any restrictions to use a certain ability only once or multiple times per turn based on a current mana cost or just for free, we already established. Not going to cover that. The ability to untap like enchanted creature, I believe it basically comes with territory. If you have the ability to untap creatures, you will be able to use this thing even with a combination with enchantments. So I don't believe that we need to cover that. Again, haste kind of works as a separate ability. Although it's not the same as haste though. Like, this is a crazy thing about those type of things. We have haste and we have something like this that basically force creature to perform like it has haste, but it doesn't. And it's a little bit different thing, because these certain conditions allows us to use these abilities but make them a little bit different. Like, we may apply the same abilities I don't know how to properly explain it. Okay, enchanted creature can attack as through it has haste. The reason why I want to put it in here has a specification. No, let's just actually come up with the actual explanation for it. It's pretty small, it's not going to be that hard. So, enchanted creature can attack as through it has haste. So, let's just stick to creatures. Enchanted creature can it's going to sound weird. Can perform as through it had certain ability, but it's not necessarily has this ability. So when in fact it doesn't have it. I will explain why it's important. So, enchanted creature can perform as through it had certain ability. So that means that as through it has haste, first strike, especially it works for trample. we have one card in Magic Arena, basically right now in current Magic, that allows us to assign damage as through it had trample, but it doesn't have trample, and it kind of works a little bit differently. So it works like trample, but it's not trample, and depending on certain circumstances and actions, it could work differently. And because of this, especially if we have some type of spells that basically directly target creatures with trample. So for instance, if we have a card that's like specifically targets a trample card, like creature with trample to just destroy or tap or whatever, without giving this card a trample, we kind of creating an interesting way to bend the rules. So if this card had a trample or haste, that way this card would basically be destroyed or basically become a target of a certain targeted spell, specific spell, to disable this card. But if we have this can perform as though it has certain ability when in fact it doesn't have it, when in fact it doesn't, it hadn't. Oh yeah, whatever. We're not going to deal with the proper grammar right here. It's not important. We're just gathering information. Enchanted creature can perform as though it had certain ability when in fact it doesn't. Enchanted creature can attack as though it has haste, first strike, trample, and etc. So basically it could be anything. So that's why I decided to put it like separately, because again, it's not a complex ability, and most of the people would see this ability as just a regular trample or as just a regular haste. But it's not freaking regular haste. Again, depending on the circumstances, it could work completely different, because it kind of a little bit it bends rules a little bit, which is an awesome thing, I believe. Continuing. So, and again, we'll be able to untap this creature, activate this ability only during your turn. Yeah, we're not going to put that, it just combines multiple things together. So, yeah, we're actually kind of close to the end. Let's just go with the last couple of cards, take a quick break, and then switch to Magic Arena, and then I will talk at the beginning of the stream about the other things that involve the changes in Magic. Basically, I will repeat myself and talk about things, yeah, and we're going to explore new format, or not necessarily format, but just new event. Yeah, I guess that's just, oh no. Let's just finish on invisibility, or not. Enchanted creature can be blocked except by walls. Again, like, the restricts the type of block except by something. We already covered this. Whenever a player casts a red spell, you may pay 1. If you do, you gain 1 life. Again, specifies when a player does something, or plays something, or basically does something, performs some type of in-game ability. You may pay certain price. If you do pay this price, you will get some type of in-game perk. We already covered this. This orc can't block creatures with power 2 or greater. We already covered this too. Tree Folk. Yeah, my favorite Tree Folks. I'm looking forward to Tree Folks at some point to get back in Magic. Because to return in Magic, this is one of my favorite factions in Magic overall, or tribes, should I say. Yeah, the basic lands. Okay, if you would draw a card during your draw step, instead you may skip that draw. Yeah, this is the last card that we're going to focus on, and that's it for this part of the session. Again, we didn't give away any keys for this part of the session, unfortunately. Hopefully we will give away some keys in the second part of the session, and if not, it's even better, because then we'll be able to give away those keys on the Russian streams, which I believe we're going to have more people that are going to want those, because again, nowadays it's pretty easy to get the key. It's not that big of a deal. Most of the people already have those. So yeah, I guess that's it for this part of the session. We're going to finish with MTG Study, with Vintage Set Studies, and I guess we see you in a couple of minutes in Magic Arena, where we're going to we're going to play forgot the name, Brewer's Delight. I already played a couple of runs in Brewer's Delight, and most of these runs I actually finished on high, basically I won all matches. You need to win like 3 matches and not lose 3 matches, and usually it's relatively easy to do. We're going to play with mono green deck, because this is kind of the deck that pretty dominant, I believe. I made it a little bit better, I added a couple of cards. So yeah, basically I'm going to talk about these things on Magic Arena part of the session. Yeah, we'll see you in the next session. Again, to repeat myself, from now on these type of streams are going to be like Magic Study streams, and the second part of the hour, second hour, we're going to play Magic Arena. These type of streams now are going to be specifically tied to a Tuesdays. That means that we're going to study Magic only once per week, which is not necessarily a good thing because we're going to study it slower. But it kind of doesn't matter because I don't know when exactly I will have time or kind of the artistic experience to actually create actual games. So we have time, there's no rush. At some point we will finish studying it. Yeah, it's because the longer I will study this, the more I will be kind of into it. Because if you usually when you finish studying something, throughout a certain period of time you will start to forget it if you're not going to repeat it. So because of this, I believe it's even better that we go in slower, because that way I will maintain these connections inside my brain, these linked pathways that work with these type of abilities that will allow me to right away switch to creating games, like from studying. And I'm not going to have a need to go through all of this in order to get inspired or to remember what things we had. So so at this point, when it comes down to MTG Study, the main thing is continuity. We need to establish a continuous growth and continuous kind of behavior when it comes down to studying, to playing, and gradually increase without any rush, because there's no way to rush. This is not main content, as I already talked about. In most cases, I'm going to create a creative content, not Magic the Gathering content. But again, this is one of the things. That's it for today, for this part of the session. See you in a couple of minutes in the second part of the session. Where's Tony? Yep, see you in a couple of minutes.